Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Magicians. Another great episode. So let's kind of break things down bit by bit what went down. Let's kind of focus kind of on like the Fillory / Margot and Elliot side of things. First of all, you have them kidnapping the eggs and leaving them on Earth. Honestly, you did the worst job getting Todd to look after them. So it's like Todd's just the worst. Todd, it's like I love you, and just at the same time, because it's almost just like Todd just pops up just to be slightly relevant to the story, and just other than that, it's like you play no other role in it. It's like, oh, you were meant to look after the eggs, and it's like, oh, other than that, like Todd kind of have no other part to play. It's just such an interesting thing to me. Because basically Margot and Elliot were trying to obviously use this as a ransom. It's like, hey, basically they want to make a situation where it's like the queen would give over her bathtub. Basically she gifted to everyone. So basically it'd be a deal like all across Fillory. All the people would be able to see her and basically understand like, oh, basically the fairies won't be able to hide anymore. Like, because obviously they're only able to hide because once they make deals with people, then people can see them. But it's like now people would be able to see that there are workings behind the scenes and stuff like that. Then you have the whole Frey situation, which I thought was so kind of interesting because it kind of brought up that aspect of it of Frey wanting to be so much like the fairies. And it's like, wow, is it because they brainwashed you and raised you as one of their own? So obviously you're going to do whatever you can to please them. Finn tried to talk her out of it because it's like, you know, no matter what, you might think your dad and humans are dishonest, because she's like, yeah, I might kind of start to dislike you less, you know? So it's like, it was on that way of her approaching, like being able to trust people again, but it's just like after what Elliot and them doing, it's like, oh, you're kidnapping babies. It's like, well, to be fair, and you know, Finn tried to say it too. It's like, you were taken from us. It's like, well, no, it was part of a deal. So it was kind of like, oh, you paid a price, and you know, you got something in return and everything. So, which it still doesn't justify all the things that the fairies have done in the meantime. But I guess it's like it's all kind of like, it goes along that same bargaining. I guess that's kind of phrase, like perspective on it. I don't know. But what was really interesting is when she ended up selling out them out and telling the Fairy Queen all their plans. Because obviously, like, it's such an interesting thing because especially with the whole hierarchy situation, like obviously Elliot is the High King or whatever, so his rule and authority kind of matters the most. But for Margot, and it's something that Jane kind of talked about too last time, is like, well, previously, was like the fact of the matter is Margot will, you know, like, is fit to be a queen. Because the fact of the matter, and it's something she kind of brings up to Elliot, the fact of the matter is Elliot didn't have to work for a stone. He took a blood test and ended up getting it. Margot took this responsibility and she's been trying to live up to it ever since. Unlike Elliot, he didn't have to work for his authority. Just like, oh, you're the High King, people listen to what you say. Like me as a High Queen, she doesn't hold the same authority that he has. Like I said, her opinion is more like a suggestion. And almost in a certain sense, it's kind of how the show's kind of always looked at it like that. So when it came down to it, it's like, oh, like Faye's life for the continuation of this deal. I was like, okay, you give us her baby back, we'll make sure that Faye actually stays alive. And it's kind of interesting because like Fairy Queen had her sense of loyalty was kind of interesting because she's like, oh yeah, the reason why I'm threatening to kill Faye now is because, well, the fact that she betrayed her own parents. So like, who's to say like, you know, you won't do the same to me, so how can I trust you? Which is kind of interesting because you benefit from her distrusting her parents and betraying them. So it was just kind of interesting to me. I'm like, your sense of loyalty is a little weird, but at the same time, I guess it kind of makes sense because it's like, if you're going to betray the people who gave birth to you, that's one thing. But then later on, it's kind of like, well, it kind of undermines it later on because you're like, well, now you know it was kind of all part of her plan. But I'll get to that in a second. But it was pretty sweet that Elliot was kind of like, no, we got to find another way, because it's like, yes, he understands, you know, as a king, he needs to be looking after his people, but at the same time, this is his daughter, and, you know, he's not really done too much for his daughter. He can't mess up a situation like this where he could have saved his daughter's life, but didn't. But then Frey reveals, I'm not actually a daughter. I'm like, wait, what? That was a real kick in the teeth, especially for Finn, because it's like, her baby died. Their baby died, like, after she gave childbirth. And it's just like, from the very beginning, they've been stringing them along. So the question that kind of pops up in my mind is like, Frey's whole situation, is she a human that they've always had on reserve? And it's like, okay, we want you to fit this role. Because obviously this was all part of manipulating them. I mean, this probably still would have been the plan if the baby had survived, but because the baby didn't survive, like they got someone else to. Because I guess because I was wondering about that too. Because that was something that's kind of brought up too. It's like, oh, how is she so much older? It's like, well, no, things work a little bit different. Time works differently in the fairy world. It's like, is that 100% true? Would it have led to a situation like that, or was that just their way of BSing it? Like I said, because it depends on Frey's situation. She must be a human that they have in reserve. Because it's like, why not go to any other human? It might be because they already had dealings with her, and they were like, okay, we're going to help you out in a situation. Because I'm curious what Frey would have gotten, because she made those conversations of like, no, she is one of the fairies, because that's something Finn was like, no, you're not, you're human. You can't, they'll never look at you as anything else. And even Todd throws out like, your name is actually Fragile Human, so obviously it shows you they don't respect you. So was that something that she was going to finally get, being embraced by the fairies? Is she someone that was orphaned and alone, and so the fairies are all she ever had and ever knew? So she secretly did want to kind of be one of them. So she's like, okay, I'll play in this role, so obviously you'll accept me and love me more. Or was that part of the act? Like, I don't know. I kind of get the feeling like it wasn't. I feel like it really was probably a situation of that there was some truth to that. You know, I don't know. I'm very interested about her motivations and stuff like that, you know, and her whole situation. But sadly, even with these revelations, it doesn't help Elliot and Margot, because things kind of end up pretty fucked up for them, because of what the Queen has done, basically because of their deal, now everyone knows that the fairies were behind everything. But it's like, oh yeah, but because I'm revealed, that means you are no longer protected. So here you are, you're kind of getting thrown under the bus too. And last thing we see is them both being pulled out of the carriage, because basically all of Fillory is going to blame them, because it's like, oh, children of Earth cause nothing but problems. You take the Beast, for example, Martin Chapman, he was a child of Earth. The whole wellspring going up is because Quentin killed, like I said, I always mix it up, Umber? I think so. I always get them confused in my head, but he killed a god and got rid of magic all across the board. Except for a certain thing that Poppy kind of brought up I thought was kind of interesting about kind of like basically a multiverse theory. It's like, well, in this dimension, like magic's going, but who's to say magic doesn't exist all across other dimensions? It's like, but you would think with gods, they'd be able to reach across multiple dimensions. So cutting off the magic to one world probably means affecting magic in all other worlds and stuff like that too. I mean, not just like the other worlds, like, oh, here's Earth and here's Fillory, here's the Netherlands. It's like, no, like in like an alternate world, it's like, oh, this is Earth 1. I mean, this is Earth 2, like, you know, like the multiverse situation like that. So that does beg a question like that. Is that something? It's something that I feel like was just randomly thrown out during conversation, but I was like, oh, there could be some real stuff to that, but nevertheless. But also because it makes it, like, going back to it, I guess it also reveals the fact is that, oh, like, all the kingdom has been taking orders from the fairies. Like, it just puts the kingdom at the forefront, in particular them, because they're Earthlings. It's because it's like, oh, you're not actually Fillorians, because that was always the thing, you know, the Foo Fighters. It's like, no, we want a Fillorian on the throne. So it's just basically Elliot and Margot are suffering all the ramifications for it. Because I guess at the end of the day, no matter, even if the fairies were behind it, it's still the fact is that the Earthlings kind of led things to be in the situation that they are, as well as they were the one abiding by the fairies' rule. So it's just that mob mentality situation of you're pissed and you need someone to blame, and they're just the easiest target to blame. So it seems like the fairies have kind of escaped it. This persecution. But the question is, like, what is it that they really plan? Because it was kind of even the Queen was kind of like, you think you have it figured out, that I just want to take control, because it's like, oh, there's the whole changing the ecosystem, plus the whole thing with the floaters, because that whole situation, that whole marriage was to make you look like an idiot, because it's like, why would you do that? That's stupid, you know? So it's that, I guess at the end of the day, this was also part of that plan of like trying to undermine their authority and just make them just look terrible to the people. So I guess this is going to make their control a lot easier, because maybe it's a situation of, because when they come in, people are going to be a lot more agreeable with the situation. Like, people might have fought before, but now there's like, oh, like there's these Earthlings, but it's like, look at us fairies, we're Fillorians ourselves, so allow us to handle things from here on. We'll kind of rule this. Maybe, I don't know, or maybe it's meant to distract the Fillorians long enough for the fairies to continue doing what they need to do, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that. Also in this episode, we have the whole Alice and Julia's situation because Alice's powers are going, it's too much for her body to handle, as pretty much figured out last episode. Just it's just not meant for her body to even because it seems like she tried to condition her body ahead of time to be able to take the magic, but it's slowly killing her. The best comparison they made it to was like rejecting your body rejecting an organ donor, so. Alice isn't willing to give up the power. She wants to fight to kind of keep it. So while Julia is trying to find a way around this, you have Henry kind of being a drunk asshole where it's just kind of like, oh yeah, kind of pointing fingers and blaming everything, even though he doesn't know the entire situation. I mean, it's because Julia herself says she'd rather keep it private, but it's just like the reason why she didn't want this magic in the first place. If it was any other circumstances, of course she would embrace it. It's because it's something kind of throws in her face. It's like you who fought so hard to get magic, in particular, referencing season 1. It's like you fought so hard to get magic, and now when you end up having it, when the world does it, you just give it away like it's nothing. And now Alice is potentially going to die because of your screw up. But at the same time, it's like if the magic was something other than Reynard, she would have gladly taken it. But because it was Reynard, it reminded her of all that was done to her. But it was kind of an interesting thing that Julia looks at too, because she's like, even without my magic, I still say Reynard, because she soon realizes it's not a magic issue. It's just kind of like a sad, fucked up thing that happened to her, and that basically it's not something that's just going to go away by giving away her magic, because it's no longer tied to the magic. It's just from what Reynard did to her, and it's just something that she will have to deal with because she's tried many different ways to try and fix it, trying to kill Reynard, to letting him go, and trying to scrape herself away from everything with any ties to him. But for her, it's like that's something that's never going to go away. Like basically there are scars that you just keep, but all you can do is find a way to deal with those scars. They'll never completely fade away. So that was just kind of an interesting thing. And the same thing is Alice kind of goes through the same thing because she hasn't quite been right since, coming back. And that was kind of my big concern about her having magic. Even to the point she even attacked Julia just because she was like, she wanted to keep that magic so much. And just because she thought if she got magic back, it would fix her. So it's like this season in particular so far, it seems like, and in this particular storyline, it seems like it's bringing Julia and Alice closer together because they both can understand each other in that extent of trying to fix themselves, but it's not as easy as they think it will be. Because that was, like I said, my biggest concern was like the fact that matters who Alice was as a nymph and all the troubles she caused. That we know so far that there was still some inkling of that still existing inside of her because she's not the Alice that we knew before. The other Alice would have never used magic like that, would have never, been so caught up in it like that. But because this Alice, because she thinks like, and magic in the show is kind of treated like a drug, especially in this season. In this case, it's just like, no, I need magic, like I need a hit of something, What's also kind of interesting about Alice's story too is the fact is that she went to a vampire. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because basically the mentality is if she ends up becoming a magical creature, it can compensate for the fact is that her body will be adjusted to just automatically being able to handle the magic. Would that have really worked? I mean, it seems like she kind of thought it would. I mean, I don't know if that was 100% guaranteed, but it was still I don't know. I feel like with that situation, you'd have to naturally be, because I'm sure there's like natural born vampires and stuff like that, which is actually kind of interesting when you actually think about it. Just kind of a little side note: the actor who plays Henry, he actually played like the alpha vampire in Supernatural. He was like the top like vampire. It's kind of interesting. I was just thinking about that. The whole vampire conversation got me thinking about that. But nevertheless, also didn't he play Bonnie's dad in the Vampire Diaries as well? I mean, I know he wasn't a vampire, but he was human, but didn't he play her dad? Or am I remembering wrong? Nevertheless, it's once again just something I was just thinking about. Nevertheless, the thing I found most interesting is how vampirism works. I think this is the first time I've ever seen vampirism in this show. In particular case, it seems like they don't have to bite you. It is kind of that thing of like, oh, drink our blood and you'll become a vampire. I don't know if it's going to be like Vampire Diary or original rules where it's like, oh yeah, the blood has to be in your system and then you have to die to come back as a vampire, or is it like the moment the blood is in your system you automatically become one? So, but fortunately, Julia's got all her magic back, and Alice kind of points something out. It's like, this isn't just some regular, like, this isn't Reynard's magic anymore. Whatever it is yours. It's finally tuned to who you are, so it's up to you to decide what you're going to do about it. So And then finally, there's the search for the keys. Obviously, you have Poppy, uh, Quentin, as well as Penny, all trying to figure this out. I love, Quentin kind of calling Penny out on his BS. It's like, I wouldn't come to you for help if I didn't really absolutely need to. Like, I know you don't like me. We don't like each other. But the fact of the matter is, you're the only hope we have for this whole situation. And he's like, basically, I know that you can actually care from time to time, because when shit kind of hits the fan, you do come through and help in the end. So it's like, oh, I need you to actually go to like the underworld so we could get the key back and everything. So that turns into a situation of, well, we got to rescue Katie because they go to Victoria, but Victoria's not willing to help because she works with Harriet. But not only that, but it's also because she doesn't like Poppy because Poppy slept with Josh when Victoria and Josh were a thing. And then on top of that, Penny can't go to Harriet because Harriet doesn't like Penny, but then she likes Katie, so they break Katie out. And then, ultimately what does Harriet want? She wants them to break into the library. It's like, okay, she'll help out with all of this stuff, but they kind of have to perform a heist on a library, which is kind of interesting considering there was a heist last season too. What I am curious though, like, what is it exactly that she is still looking for? Like, I don't think they specified exactly what she wanted from the library. Just like, oh yeah, I need you to steal some things for me from the library. So I'm curious what exactly. Because remember, she wanted stuff out of the poison room initially. Well, she wanted access to the poison room. So does that mean whatever she wants now isn't in the poison room? Because for one, no one can go in the poison room either. Not unless you find a way to disperse all poison. Penny literally died because of that. So I guess because it's kind of something like, well, I don't know, maybe Harriet never knew about that safety like aspect, so she never, it's something she hasn't really, because like I said, she didn't specify the poison room, just the library itself. So maybe just some other things she feels like, well, now that all magic is kind of going, a lot of the library's defenses are down, so it's probably like the best time. Which makes the question, does the poison room still work now that magic is gone? I mean, maybe that's why. Maybe that will be the fact, is that the poison room is accessible now because there's no magic. But it's definitely going to be interesting. Penny turning into a book so he can be swallowed by a dragon. Him and Katie are on good terms again. It is a situation of like, man, so much fucked up things happen to them. And it's like, it's actually kind of funny. And Katie's like, no, it's not. It's like, you gotta admit, it's a little bit funny. Just all the stuff that they've been through. Considering themselves kind of a cursed couple. But even Penny's like, even when it's all said and done, for him, his only hopes of ever going back because his body is in fact gone. Like, I figured that's what it was implying, but I wasn't 100% sure. I thought maybe Katie would have put his body out, but it's like, no, by putting his body out, it would have, signified like, oh yeah, like send me to the underworld. So that's a whole situation. So it's like, so his body's gone, so getting magic back is the only way that it fixes. Because Alice tried. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be a situation where Julia would be able to do it, and it's just like, this is their best option. So they need to get back the 4 key while also robbing the library. So that's going to be interesting. And there's also the other angle of, what's her face? The lady, I'm blanking on her name. She was Tess in Eureka. She's also played David's wife, Sarah, on The Punisher, the TV show on Netflix. Her character finds out about Julia lying about having magic and stuff like that. She still never told Julia, like, because they were like, oh yeah, what is this I'm sniffing? It's like, it's just a magical creature. That's all you really got to know. Not letting them know, because we as the audience know that that's a fairy. And it was kind of interesting too, because even Julia's like, it looks different. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, it actually does give it a different vibe when she sniffed it. And I love, like I said, I love that this show is kind of like a weird Harry Potter meets like this drug. Like it's like Harry Potter meets Misfits, essentially, which is how things kind of get handled. Is she literally had to sniff literal fairy dust. It's kind of funny when you think about it, but never funny in a weird dark way, but nevertheless. But what it looked like, it was like this black aura around her hands when she cast magic, in comparison to the typically like clear aura, that silhouetted clear aura that kind of appears around someone's hands. So that was kind of an interesting distinction. I wondered, like, depending on what supernatural magical creature you like ingested like that. I mean, I guess I was about to say something, but it's like, nah, nevertheless, I won't go down that route. But I guess, like, would it change depending on what magical creature you ended up absorbing? So, like, would it be different if it was a vampire or something like that? Would you even be able to tap into, like, the magic of something like that? I mean, I guess I would assume so, since it's just like, I feel like a fairy doesn't just, maybe fairies just naturally radiate magic. Because you even saw it a little bit when, like, the fairy queen disappears. Like, she has that same aura around her, stuff like that. I don't know. I thought that was just kind of an interesting detail. But you do have that lady being like, oh, yeah, after this, Julia's going to owe her a deal. And even Henry's like, oh, really? You don't... Like, Julia didn't have much choice if she wanted to save Alice's life and get her magic back. But it's like, at what cost? Like I said, that's kind of been my biggest fear, is like, if anyone else found out about Julia having magic, she'd be just kind of be used. Like, people probably experiment on her, like, just use her for this and that. There's no telling what that lady's going to do, especially because even Henry doesn't like her, because he's like, you manipulate situations. She's like, I did the best thing buying the school. Like, so many other people would have done so much worse. It's like, yeah, but you didn't help out the situation by basically shutting down a school or whatever. But it's like, it's going to come back in some shape or form, like something pretty bad she's going to want Julia to do. What shape or form, I don't know. We'll just kind of have to wait and see what ends up unfolding with all of that. But like I said, overall, a great episode. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.